Hello, everyone. My name is Amber Andrews, and I serve as the Donor Stewardship and Events Manager at John Carroll University. Thank you for joining us this evening for our next installment of ACES, the Alumni Continuing Education Series. ACES was established in the spring of 2013 by the Office of Alumni Relations with the spirit of lifelong learning. The program offers enrichment, opportunities for alumni, friends, with expertise from members of the JCU administration, faculty, and alumni community. Over the past year, we have heard from experts on ethics, financial planning, racial equity, and social justice, and space exploration, just to name a few. It is with great pleasure tonight that this event is co-sponsored by the Chicago Alumni Chapter and JCU's Women's Mentoring Network Group. WMN was also launched in 2013 as a new professional development and networking group specifically geared to female professionals. JCU WMN is designed to connect alumni to networking, mentoring, and business development opportunities. Tonight, we will hear from 4 amazing alumni as they discuss leadership, work-life balance, and career development. Before I introduce our guests, I want to share a few housekeeping items. First, we encourage you to view this program in full screen mode. Additionally, please ensure that you stay muted throughout the duration of the program. Following the moderated conversation, we will have opportunity for questions and answers. Please utilize the chat feature for your questions. We will curate them and ask them as many as possible. So thank you. It is now my pleasure to introduce our guests for tonight's discussion. Mary Ann Ahern, class of 1976, joined NBC5 News in March 1989 and was named political reporter in 2006. On the political beat, Ahern was covered political campaigns from the White House to Springfield to Chicago. She witnessed the transition from Mayor Richard Daley to Mayor Rahm Emanuel and traveled through the primary states from 2008 to 2012 presidential campaign, just as she did in 1988 while a reporter in Atlanta. She's gained recognition for covering the religion beat and reported from Rome on the election of Pope Francis, Pope Benedict's farewell, and the 2014 canonization of Pontiff John XXIII and John Paul II. Before coming to NBC5, Ahern was the political reporter for WXIA TV in Atlanta, Georgia. From 1985 to 1989, she served as a reporter/weekend anchor at Week TV in Peoria, Illinois, from 1982 to 1985. A native of Michigan City, Indiana, Ahern received her master's degree in education from Northeastern Illinois University and another master's degree in journalism from Northwestern University. She earned the Peter Lisagor Lifetime Achievement Award from the Chicago Headline Club in 2012. Katie Heiduck, class of 2004, is a director of brand partnerships at Warner Media. Now in her 10th year at the company, Katie is responsible for building and maintaining sponsor relations across numerous live events for national sports properties, such as NCAA Men's Final Four, NBA All-Star Weekend, Capital One's The Match, and more. Along with her team, Katie's role entails bringing brands to life on the ground, and she oversees the process from ideation to execution. Originally from Grosse Pointe, Michigan, and a few other stops in between, Katie has called Chicago home for the past 6 years. In her free time, she's actively involved with the Junior League of Chicago, among other volunteer activities. She also served on the JCU Alumni Association Board for 4 years. Jane Lambesis, class of 1983, is a senior vice president at Federated Hermes, where she has achieved a broad perspective and fluent knowledge in mutual fund investing over her 33-year career with the company. Her commitment to excellence, integrity, collaborative approach, and dedicated work ethic makes her well-established and somewhat of an authority in her field of mutual fund sales. Jane has also been a member of the prestigious Chairman's Club in recognition of her exemplary sales and client service achievements. Jane has also received the 2018 Richard B. Fisher Award that is given to the regional consultant who has best exemplified the character, professionalism, and core principles of the late chairman. Through much of her career, Jane has developed educational programs for women with specific investment needs, also offering keen insights as to how investors can build wealth. In addition to a BA in economics from JCU, Jane is also a graduate of Securities Industries Institute at the Worthington Business School of Business. She also serves on the board of trustees for both John Carroll and St. Vader High School in Arlington Heights, Illinois. And finally, our moderator for tonight, Amy Marshland. Amy is a Chicago-based Associate Vice President of Compensation at Revantage under the Blackstone Group. She has previously held consulting roles at May Group and Aon Hewitt and worked in the compensation at the University of Chicago Medical Center. In 2010, Amy received her Bachelor's of Science in Business Administration, focusing on management, human resources, and psychology. She's also received her Master's of Science in Human Resource Management and a BA from Robert Morris University in Pittsburgh, as well as her Professional in Human Resource Certification. In her spare time, Amy acts as the Personnel Vice President of the Junior League of Chicago, President of the Lambda Mu chapter of Chi Omega House Corporation at Loyola University Chicago, Treasurer of the Chicago Alumni Panhellenic Conference, and is the President of the John Carroll Chicago Alumni Chapter. She is the Chief People Officer and the co-founder of KarmaScore, a woman-owned startup that aims to help app users build healthier, stronger, and more engaging relationships. Please join me in welcoming our wonderful panel.
Thanks so much for that introduction, Amber. Good evening, everybody. So happy that you all could join us this Monday night. As Amber mentioned, I'm Amy Marshland, and I'll be moderating this evening's program. We are so lucky to have such an amazing panel of women with us, and I'm very excited to learn more about their experiences in the workforce. We have a number of questions, so I'm going to go ahead and jump right in. So Mary Ann, if you don't mind, I'm going to kick things off with you. First question here is, what challenges have you faced as a woman in the workforce?
Oh. Mute. We could take up the whole night with just me talking about that. There's a lot of challenges, of course. I came to journalism, I was a teacher first and always wanted to be a reporter. And so went back to school for that. So each stop that I've been at, from Peoria to Atlanta, now here in Chicago, which seems like an eternity, but some 33 years, I believe. There are different challenges depending on the time. I could talk about the challenges of as a new mom, what I did then. I could talk about the challenges of COVID and how we've adapted. But just briefly, I would say overall, and we can be, if you want me to be more specific, I certainly can be. You have to learn to adapt. You have to also take care of yourself. And you can't do everything. I'm of the group, you guys who are a bit younger, you're way better on your mental health and all of that. I was focused on getting ahead and getting the next job and making sure that, I got to where I wanted to go. And so I think I was sort of on that constant treadmill. And it took me to have 3 children kind of quickly in a row that I said, wow, this is a very difficult job to have with 3 small children. So I was able to finagle and beg, really, to work 3 days a week for 10 years when my kids were young. That was such a wonderful way to have some balance in my life. So that was one challenge. Now, the present day challenges for me are, I live with my phone practically all the time, and putting it down is a big challenge. The social media as a reporter, politics, I say politics and sports are just constantly on social media. So I literally have to sometimes just put it down and not constantly look at it. And, it's been these last 20 some months, have been really pretty crazy for everybody. And I've still been going to work, but I'm in an isolated office. It's certainly nothing like what I've used to working with, but I'm really glad to have my job and I enjoy my job. So I don't want to hog all the time, but if I can certainly take more questions about it. But I think the overall message is figure out how to work. This is what you want, make yourself happy, but also, you've got to adapt. And if I kind of use this expression, if you're not on the bus, you're off the bus. Figure out how to stay on the bus and be happy about it.
Thank you. Yeah, so much of what you just said really resonates with me. I know, myself personally, it's very difficult to not check your email right when it's at your fingertips at all hours, especially, in COVID times, it's kind of hard to sometimes turn off, especially for those of us who are remote. But thank you so much for that answer. Katie, do you have anything to add?
Yeah, I would say that, for me, I completely agree with what Marianne said about being able to adapt. Some of the challenges that I faced, especially early on, is I've always looked really young for my age. And so, when you're first starting out in your job, and then as you start to move into more leadership roles, you've got to kind of fight for your voice to be heard and to, be the expert at the table. And, especially working in sports, it's so fast paced and, it's still fairly a male dominated industry. If you're not the first one to, speak up on a conference call or have the most succinct answer in a meeting, sometimes it's hard to really be that voice. And by being able to adapt and to, figure out how to navigate a lot of different working dynamics, that's where you really find the success. And I would say that it's probably been almost a blessing in disguise, because I was forced to do that in a way that I don't know that when I first started working, I thought that I would have that particular challenge. So I would say that those are probably the biggest hurdles that, I've had to jump through.
Yeah. No, thank you so much for that. Kind of along the lines of challenges a little bit broader. What challenges have you faced with the pandemic, and how have you coped with these challenges? Going to start off with, how about Jane?
Thank you. And I just would comment off of what Katie and Marianne just said, and it's really adaptability. And I think that's what's come from us all having to adjust to the surroundings the last 22 months. I think you just really had to think on your feet. And to Katie's point, early on in your career, when you have to think fast and you have to choose your words carefully and make sure that you're heard, I think it really, really benefited myself and my industry during this whole COVID situation. I'm typically out seeing clients 4 days a week, and might have been in my office 1 day a week. And I just flipped a switch on March 20th and figured out, well, I just better figure out Zoom and Teams and FaceTime and everything else. And so that adaptability at an older age in your career was a bit of a challenge. But I have to say, there was many nights I was quite pleased with myself, or even just that I learned something that day that I didn't know how to do earlier, which kind of leads, I think, all of us to another question, which is, you have to be willing to say, I have no idea how to do that. Can somebody explain this to me? Show me how to do it. Make the mistake. Be that person that says, wait a minute, I don't understand that, back up. And I think during COVID, it just really brought that to light, that skill set, that talent, and that willingness to laugh at yourself when you're like, I have no idea how to do this, but I'm going to figure it out. And so actually the challenges of COVID came to be quite a blessing, because where I sit today is a completely different skill set, or additional skill set, that I had for the first 33 years of my career at Federated Hermes. So I don't know, I have found it to be somewhat rewarding, as stifling as it has been, to be not seeing clients. I also, quite honestly, for some of us, it slowed my life down dramatically. And that I'm thankful for, not having to physically be everywhere, like all of us might have to have all been downtown Chicago at the Union League Club or somewhere this evening, but allowed all of us to really hopefully have a very full day of the things that we love and want to do, and still be here sharing our thoughts with all of you. And that's kind of one of the silver linings or blessings of COVID.
So many great points there that I just totally agree with. Marianne, do you have anything to add to that?
Yes, I mean, the pandemic as a reporter really did change, as Jane mentioned. We always go in person to talk to people, and sometimes it's a drive to get to the suburbs, or it would be difficult to get back in time. And so, yes, the Zoom has really helped in all of that in fact, we can now get not just maybe the B or C level expert, we can get the A expert, because we can do a Zoom with that person who might not just be in Chicago, but in Hawaii or wherever that person might be. So some of it, I know at first we were like, wow, it's so odd that we're not meeting and seeing them. And people are often reluctant to do an interview with a television camera. And now they've learned how to do Zoom. They're like, sure, I'll talk to you. So that has been quite interesting. But I do miss the camaraderie of our newsroom. I work in a place with 80 to 100 people. I sit in sort of a cubicle with two others. At times when things are going on, you hop up from your desk, you run and you talk to them. And so that part has been still a little bit sad, really. I mean, I'm glad they have figured out a spot for me. There's only 4 of us on a different floor. We have our own offices. I have a lovely view. I'm not complaining at all. And I'm glad to have a place to kind of walk to and go because I live very close to NBC now. But I do miss that sort of, finding out what's going on from others and all of that goes on. And so I do look forward to hopefully that we get back to some of that.
Yeah, no, I totally hear you with that. I mean, there's pros and cons to it. Just starting to return to the office now, it's great to be with my colleagues, but I also find myself not as productive because, there's a lot of chatting and socializing and there's a lot of work to get done. Would have gotten a little bit more done at home, but yeah, it's been interesting for sure. Katie, do you have anything to add?
Yeah, I mean, obviously working in sports right before the pandemic, we had just rolled through a successful NBA All-Star in Chicago. And then, we were in the final planning stages for the Final Four that was going to be in Atlanta. And then, everything stopped and all the dominoes started to fall. Every project that we had scheduled for that year got canceled. And so, there's a lot of uncertainty, but, fortunately I was able to keep my job, which was great. And I would say similar to what Jane had said, it allowed for downtime that I don't think I've had in however many years I've been doing this. So I was able to spend time with family. I was able to just kind of really take up some hobbies that I hadn't really done in a while. So, as horrible as COVID has been and not, having real events to work on for the past 18 months, from that standpoint, it was, a really nice surprise and a good thing to come out of not working really until recently.
I heard of so many people coming up with some interesting hobbies. Unfortunately, I feel like I kind of faced the opposite. It was crazy all the time, much crazier than pre-COVID times. So sadly, I didn't have much time to do a lot of fun things. But yeah, moving on. Next question. What are your most valuable qualities that have helped you in your career? I'll go ahead and start with Jane.
I think most importantly is honesty. I think mentioned earlier was integrity. But I just mentioned a minute ago, laughter. I mean, sometimes I think you just have to bring that piece of that humility of yourself to say, I don't understand, or let's stop here. Let's recenter this conversation. Am I with you on all of this? So I think some of the most valuable qualities were my ability to say that I'm hopefully humility enough to say, or humble enough to say, I don't understand. And I also think that with that comes the integrity and the honesty. I also think I only know one way of doing things, and that's being very, very straightforward. And that's really benefited me. Katie mentioned this earlier. Sometimes you don't even know the qualities of which you have that are being developed until, quite frankly, you realize in a meeting at some point or in many other different interactions that that's not how everybody communicates. And so I have found that throughout my career, coming from a very large family, I'm number 7 of 7. I had to speak up to be heard. And I had to maybe sometimes stomp my feet and carry on to make sure they understood what I was saying and that they were hearing me. And those qualities really were of great benefit for me in my career, being that I'm in a pretty male-dominated field of investments. And now I look back and think, what a blessing. That again, that was my upbringing, and that's the only way I know how to communicate. So I would say honesty, integrity, a little bit of laughter, but humility has really, really been probably something that's really benefited me all along the way.
That's great. Marianne, do you have anything to add?
Well, first of all, Jane and I share, I'm the youngest of 7 as well. Didn't know that. So I totally relate, the stomping of the feet especially. They could all do an impression of me, my entire family. But I have to add, and of course, because we're doing this for John Carroll, I do think that, being having a chance to do a lot of different things in my life, I feel as if I wasn't always that scared. I mean, I grew up in Little Michigan City, Indiana, but, I had a chance to be, the editor of my high school paper. I went to John Carroll and I did I joined things that I wanted to join. I mean, I might have been a little shyer than some of the Chicago kids until I got to know them, but whatever. I think that being willing to just go for it, and that kind of let the difficult days, don't waste your time on the days that don't go well. I have plenty of those, and you have to just kind of say, you know what, not every day is a home run. In my business, not every day is 60 minutes. People think that each story, and especially in Peoria, and I'm dying to get out of there and get to the next spot. If there was something that happened that went to hell with the story, I thought, I'm going to be stuck here forever. No, I mean, even here in Chicago, I make mistakes. I try not to, trust me. But, when things like that happen, it can really eat at you and say, darn it, how did I let that happen without someone else noticing? Because I have an editor who also reads my script or whatever. But you have to let some of those things go. And I think that being a survivor, especially in my business, is, that what we talked about, being adaptable, being kind of a quick study, and that networking. I have to call people, I have to talk to them, I have to have good sources, I have to trust them. But that takes, some cultivating. They don't necessarily give me a call the first couple of years that I was here. But now, after all these years, it's kind of interesting. Mayor Rahm Emanuel hated me when I was after him and I was the political reporter at City Hall. Now he's not there. He's my BFF. It makes me laugh. I'm like, really? You're going to text me and tell me what's going on? You couldn't have cared less about me. But anyway, I think it's your reputation too. People know if you are, as James said, a straight shooter. Whether you're in her business or my business or case, people know that they can rely on you. I think that makes a big difference.
Yeah, no, fantastic points with that as well. I know something that resonated with me with what you said was, not every day is going to be a home run, and that's okay. I think, a lot of John Carroll alums and students are very conscientious people, and you want it to be a home run every time. But I think it's good to keep that perspective, and then also touching on kind of the importance of building your network. Katie, do you have anything to add to that?
Well, I'm not the youngest of 7. I am the younger sibling, but not the youngest of 7. No, I would say that I liked Jane's sense of humor message, because, I mean, working in sports, our biggest thing is to put something entertaining out there for fans. We're not, doing anything beyond that. And while it's important work, especially for our clients and for, revenue and all of that, at the end of the day, that's what it is. So if you can't laugh at yourself, if you can't find, the positive in a tough day, then you're really in the wrong business. And then I would say that, I've always loved to learn. September used to be my very favorite month of the year because you got to go back to school. So, that has stuck with me in my job. So for me, figuring out the puzzle of what's going to be the most successful for, an event that we're working on, or for a client, or, putting together a creative brief. I love all of that. And, learning about our industry and the new technologies and things like that we can bring to it, that's what makes my day interesting and keeps me engaged, as I continue on in my career.
Thank you so much for that. Kind of along the same lines, if you could go back in time, what would you have done differently in your career? I'm going to start out with Marianne.
Oh man, because I made a career switch. I taught high school English for 5 years. I taught at 2 different high schools in Chicago when I first graduated from college. So I taught at Gordon Tech, and then I taught what it was called Gordon Tech, and then I taught at New Trier, and decided after 5 years that if I was going to go for my dream, I better go do it. And so, I think even my own kids have said, like, Mom, why did you do that? Why didn't you know? Well, of course you don't know necessarily at 21 or 22 what you want to do. So I'm not quite sure I would say no to the teaching altogether. Do I wish I had moved along a little faster? I still ended up with my goal of being a reporter in Chicago, which took a while to get to do. It took 7 years from Peoria to Atlanta to get back here. And so I think more, maybe some personal experiences, that I don't have to go into with all of you, but, my life isn't so absolutely perfect. Everybody thinks, oh, she's got it all by the tail. Not so. You have some things that you'd like to say, oh, gosh, wish that didn't happen. But overall, career-wise, I'm good. And even though, it was kind of a peak and valley kind of thing, I wouldn't necessarily do it over. Change it.
Yeah. That's great. Katie, same question. What would you have done differently if you could go back in time?
I don't know that I would have done anything differently. When I graduated from John Carroll, I majored in history and literature. So I thought I was going to go work for a museum or do something kind of in that vein. And a job in sports opened up and I never looked back. And I've been able to live in a lot of different places around the country, and I wouldn't trade those experiences. I think that it's made me a more well-rounded person. It's made me a happier person. To Marianne's point, yeah, there's certain things that you'd be like, maybe I shouldn't have made that decision. But at the end of the day, you can't live your life with regrets. So I think I would probably just tell my 21-year-old self to really embrace every new opportunity that comes your way, and, don't be scared of the unknown and just go for it.
I completely agree with that, because you really never know what opportunity is going to present itself. And, I think a lot of times coming out of school, you have this set plan, and very rarely does it really go according to plan. You're probably not going to land your dream job straight out of the gate, in an entry-level position. I know about being 11 years in the workforce now. I feel like I'm finally really enjoying what it is that I'm doing. And for many years, I kept being like, is this the right thing for me? Should I switch? And, it's just gotten more interesting in the last couple of years. But thank you so much for those answers. Moving on to our next question. Have you ever had an advocate as opposed to our mentor? And has it made a difference if that advocate is a male or female? And I'm going to pass this along to Marianne.
I absolutely had the best advocate, who was a John Carroll grad, who was Tim Russert. And if you don't know Tim Russert, then you better. Tim Russert, who was in my brother's class at John Carroll, who worked for NBC News, who was with Meet the Press, was the moderator of Meet the Press, and definitely was my advocate as I moved from Atlanta to Chicago, actually from Peoria to Atlanta too. He was, I called him my closer. They were in the contract negotiations goes on, and they're looking at 2 or 3 or 4 people, and we would find out that, okay, I'm in the final 3. And then I would have Tim give the call to the news director. And I think that really, would make a difference, because they trusted him. Of course, he was a big name and a national name. But more than that, Tim didn't just call. He would call me back the next day and would say, what happened? How did it go? I have this great, I love to tell this story about Tim. After I was here in Chicago, and he had written a couple of books about his dad, and he wrote a book, and he was here in town, and he was having a book signing. And at the time, my contract was up, and I was looking for, it was sort of, this sounds so greedy and crazy right now, I hate saying it, but I was looking for the parking spot. And I had to pay $200 a month or whatever it was for a parking spot. And I found out that some of the people were getting theirs free. And I was like, darn it, I want that parking spot. And so I told Tim about it. We're walking around through the hallways of NBC, and the big boss shows up in the hallway, unexpected. Oh, Tim, great. Marianne's going to be our new political reporter. And Tim looks at him and says, just give her the parking spot. And so it was sort of embarrassing. The boss was like, I got the parking spot the next day. So what better advocate was Tim than Tim Russert? I was so selfishly so sad also, just because he was so good to John Carroll and all of his so many friends. But I try my best. I'm not able to give people parking spots, but when it comes to being a cheerleader for others especially John Carroll grads. I really do. Those who reach out to me, I do my best to do that because you have to pay it forward as he did. So yeah, I had a terrific one.
Wow, that's an incredible story. You really can't get a better advocate. I don't think so. Thank you so much for sharing that. That's very, very interesting. Our next question, do you have any tips on how to network? And I'm going to pass this along to Katie.
Yeah, I mean, I would say that, when I first started at Warner Media, the head of our division at the time, he made it a point of doing like a quick little get to know you breakfast. And as part of that, he introduced me to a lot of the female leaders in our company. And just so that I could, sort of build my own network within the company. And so I would say that, wherever you work, to find those individuals who you can, have a quick conversation with, build a relationship with, especially if it's in areas that you want to learn more about, or just, find that advocate, find that mentor as you continue through your career. I think that's really important. And as I've moved in my career and moved upward, I think it's just as important to network up as it is to network down, because you can learn so much from, the people who are just starting out. There's a lot of things that have changed, technology-wise, industry-wise, all of that. And I think you do yourself a disservice if you don't network with folks who know more about those things than you do, who are more, with it than you might be. So I would say that. And then just having lived in 6 different states over the course of my career so far, when you move to a new city, you are constantly restarting your life. And from a professional standpoint, getting involved, both when I lived in Atlanta and, when I moved to Chicago, I became very involved in the junior league, and from a professional standpoint, and then also from a personal standpoint, that was really helpful for me to make those connections, to really make it feel like you were home and contributing to your community.
Yeah, no, I think those are great points. I know one thing, I don't know what event it was, some bowler event when I was in school, but I remember ever since then, I've always had this emphasis on networking. They really drilled that into me. And it's so true. You really never know, who's going to be connected to who. There could be, a number of surprising opportunities and connections that if you just start a conversation, you'll become aware of. So yeah, I mean, I agree, like highly encourage all to continuously network and also just get involved. I find the more you get involved with things, the more you get out of it in the end. But Marianne, do you have anything to add?
Well, absolutely. I mean, if you're not, I think Kate made a great point. If you're not just talking to those, that as when you're in your career trying to move up to the next ladder, but now where I'm at, trying to know who our younger reporters, and even when we have interns, they have been so incredibly helpful to me, especially when it comes to the social media and just sort of and the etiquette of social media and all of that. So yeah, you don't give up networking just because perhaps now I'm in the final stages of my career. You better keep that going if you want to be, in the game and part of a job. You don't just mail it in. So yeah, I think that's a great point that Katie made.
Thanks. Kind of going along with some additional tips and tricks. Do you have any for those trying to balance work and life? And I'm going to start off with Jane.
Sure, I do. I think it's just so important. I have 3 children, a wonderful husband, and I think you have to just really every day think about what helps you stay centered. When early on in my career, I was not a morning person, I can tell you that. But after you have young children and you realize that might be the only part of the day that you truly have to yourself before that baby wakes up or that preschooler. So I kind of just forced myself into being a morning person. And I often think of what they used to tell you on an airplane, put the oxygen mask on yourself because you'll be no help to anybody else. And that's honestly what used to get me out of bed in the morning in the dark and the cold winter days in Chicago, to just get up and whatever that is to you, it might be working out, it might be meditating, centering yourself spiritually, reading, whatever that is that makes you feel yourself and comfortable to start your day with your best foot forward, because it's going to be crazy. You're balancing a lot. But I think the best tip is just take care of yourself first as best you can. Marianne said this earlier, don't beat yourself up. Some organize to say, it's a well-oiled machine this week, and then what I was basically saying is because next week's going to be a disaster around here, meaning, if someone says, how was your day? I'm like, well, everybody's where they're supposed to be. That means 3 kids are at school and we're working. So, you just you can't assume that it's going to go perfectly. And when it doesn't, you just have to let it go and learn from it and say, okay, what could we have done differently? Okay, maybe we need to get up a few minutes earlier. Maybe we need to pack the backpacks before school, whatever that is. But I think it's just really important that you take care of yourself first. It might not just be an everyday, it might be 3 times a week at best, or maybe it's 1 time a week. But I do think it's important. My tip to be for a lot of working women, I just think is to take care of yourself. There's a lot that makes us tick. We're not necessarily always on one channel. And so I think you need to tap into that and understand what makes you happy and feel balanced so that you can be that better part of yourself for those who need you. And most importantly, to your job, because I love what I do. And I love the fact that when I get there, I've got the energy to commit to it. To Marianne's point and Katie's point, I'm in the back 9 of my career. So I have to have that energy level for the younger folks around me. One thing I always think is give and you shall receive. So when I'm around the younger folks, I just try to give as much as I can of myself. And it isn't me talking, it's me listening. It's me asking questions of them because I learn so much from the younger folks that are around me. And I just love how they learn differently than, quite frankly, I was taught or I learned. So I just think you really have to just kind of listen and try to balance that inner part of yourself as best you can and know that some days are going to go great. Some weeks might be a well-oiled machine, and then some just might be a disaster, and you have to just let it go and try your best for the next.
No, thanks. That was great. Marianne, do you have anything to add?
I did talk about, working the 3 days a week for 10 years. And I did go back full time when my youngest was going to high school. And so I have been back full time for 10 plus years. But that really was, it was a godsend that kind of got me through those years. I was able to be a part of, not just going to the recital, but driving to the practice. And that's what, as a mom, you want to be there for all of that. And while I wasn't there at every single thing, I was really incredibly blessed with the same gal. I can't even call her our sitter, but we had a gal with us for 18 years, like incredible. It was like dialing up, okay, will you come be my, guardian angel mom? And it was that. And so what I say to people who are young is, don't be so difficult with the people that help you. I have had friends at work who are like wanting to have French lessons going on or some crazy thing when they're 4, no television ever. Like, please, I think you might have the TV on at times. I mean, I get it that you want to have, quality time and reading and everything, but, don't overdo it. So, yeah, the balance part, it doesn't always happen every single day. It certainly doesn't when you have a young family, but it comes back to you later. I have a lot of good balance now. And for the men listening, they might not like this, but I say, maybe it's me, but I say the family's happiness often rests with the mom. And if the mom's not happy, and if she's not and you're not happy every single day, but if, don't exude this happiness, sort of like we're in this together kind of thing, I'm not so sure that the whole family is. And so whether you're the checker at Walmart or the reporter at Channel 5, you really want to be happy. And so you got to figure that part out, what works for you.
Yeah, I think that's a great reminder. Katie, anything to add?
I would say also balance for one person is not necessarily the same balance for somebody else. So, if you're a really social person and to you recharge by, having a full day of work and then going and, doing a gym class and meeting up with friends and all of that, do it. I'm not personally like that. I need some downtime, but, I think you've got to kind of carve out, to what both Marianne and Jane were saying earlier, what makes you happy, and then find ways to build that into your day, your week. And then also take the vacation that you get. The job will be there when you come back, and nobody is you know, some professions, sure, but certainly not in mine. Nobody is that important that, you know, the whole company will collapse without you. So take the vacation when you get it, because that's part of finding that balance in your life. Work will always be there.
That's great advice, and definitely something that we probably all need to keep in mind. Thank you. So the next question, how do you reinvent yourself when making a career change? And I'm going to pass this to Marianne since she kind of touched on this earlier.
Yeah, well, for me, I had to go back to school. Now, it might not be the case for everyone, but yes, here I had been a high school English teacher at 2 different high schools for 5 years. And I don't think I had sort of the guts at 22 to go off and do this. And my mom, as we said, 7 kids, raised those kids alone. And she was a teacher, and I kind of always looked at her and said, wow, you know, she seems to be got it together. So I think I was gravitated to teaching, and I still did love it and wonder if someday I might, in my next life, might teach again. But I just really always wanted to be a reporter. I, as I mentioned, you know, had written for the paper in high school, college, a little bit, that kind of stuff. So I had to go for it. And when I walked into New Trier, which was a great place to teach, and said, listen, I'm not coming back, I'm going back to school, the principal said to me, oh, you're going to law school. And I said, no, I'm not going to law school. I'm going to be a reporter. And he looked at me like I had 3 heads, you know, and said, you think you're really going to get a job doing that? And I said, oh my God, of course I will. Have you seen those people? They're not that good. I could do this. Not realizing that I was going to have to go, of course, to Peoria for 2.5 lonely years. Trust me, they were lonely. And 4.5 in Atlanta, which was a lot better because I had an older sister there and her family. So they were fun to hang out with. But so, you know, reinventing, it isn't just, oh, gee whiz, I think I'd like to do this. You do have to have a plan. You got to figure it out and how to execute it and know what your end goal is. And who are those people? Who are your Tim Russerts that will help you along the way? But yes, I'm incredibly blessed and really glad that I did it. But while I was doing it, when I was in Peoria on a lonely Saturday night for 2.5 years saying, what the heck did I do this for? You know, by the time I was married at 35, I had been in 14 weddings for all the friends I'd met along the way, you know, and people were like, wow. But hey, you know, it worked out pretty well, sort
of. Thank you. Thank you for sharing. So a couple questions we're getting in the chat. What lessons have you learned by working in predominantly male industries? And I'm going to shoot this over to Jane.
I think what's most important is, I think, you know, maybe the term is a little overused, but I think everyone would understand it. And that is lean in, you know, lean in and trust your gut. Because what I have found, and not me, but observing other women in a fairly male dominated businesses, we're a really quick study. We figure things out pretty quickly. It might be from the gut or from the heart, but we usually get it right or close to right. So lean in, listen, and then raise your hand. As I said earlier, raise your hand to say, I don't understand, or raise your hand to say, that's not clear to me, or raise your hand to say, wait a minute, I have an idea. You know, and I just think that that's been very beneficial. I think you have to know your place. I mean, certainly you're not doing that on day one, but to understand who's sitting around the table with you, and maybe Marianne, you could, whether it's the kitchen table growing up, I knew when I could speak and I could be heard. And I think that that's, to me, that's just very important. As far as an advocate, earlier question, I had a male advocate, didn't make a difference. It was their male or female, but I think what he saw in me was a daughter type figure. And I look the same. And now I'm always just in awe of the younger women and men around me. And I see in them my own children, and I want to help them. And so I guess one of the tips along this question would be ask for the help. Say, could you help me? Use those simple words. Could you help me? Would you be able to help me? And you'd be surprised. People will stop, listen, because when you ask people for help, genuinely, people are kind, loving individuals. They'll help. You have to ask for that help. So I think that's also important, to lean in and be willing to ask for the help.
Yeah, I think that's really good to keep in mind. Katie, I know working in sports, do you have any thoughts around lessons learned by working in a predominantly male industry?
Yeah, I mean, I would say that I was actually really fortunate in that I've had probably an equal number of female bosses and managers as I've had male ones. And I would actually say that the female ones almost hold you to higher standards because they know how tough it is to kind of break that ceiling, to use the expression. But at the same time, for the most part, they're also your fiercest supporters. And, you know, there have been plenty of times when you hear conversations later that, you know, somebody stood up for you in a meeting that you weren't a part of, you know, on whatever topic it was. So I think that was really interesting to learn. But I agree with what Jane said about raising your hand. You don't get anywhere by not asking. So, you know, figure out the right moments for that. But it's really important to, you know, step up.
Amy, I was just going to add on something when Katie said figure it out, or you used the word figure. One of my favorite terms is I trust you, figure it out. And I figure it out is just a great 3 words, whether it's you're talking to your children, because you know they have the talent, you know they have the insight. So you're basically saying, I trust you. I trust that gut feeling, figure it out. Though if you were to just say figure it out, it sounds, I don't know, a bit sarcastic. So I think when you put, I trust you, figure it out, I think that's just such a great leap of confidence in whether that's someone that's working with you or for you or in your group. I just, that figure, when Katie said figure, I'm like, I've got to remember to say that because I just think that can be a great way to advocate, to let somebody know you trust them and you trust their decision-making process and you know they can figure it out.
Yeah, I think that's a great point that you made there. I mean, I know personally in my career, you can kind of tell once you've built that trust with a person, and that's a great feeling to know that you have that. So thank you for sharing. Another question that we got in the chat, are there lessons that you've learned at JCU that have been instrumental in your careers? And I'm going to start with Marianne.
Well, I think the big lesson, and I brought it up a little bit, was the chance to get to do a lot of different things. Obviously, you know, whether it was, you know, just, you weren't in a giant classroom where you couldn't raise your hand, where you could ask questions, where you knew the professors, you know, that gave you some confidence to be able to say to people, you know, I need help, or boy, this is great, I want to take that class again, or whatever. I mean, I think that, yes, a lot of things at John Carroll. Friendships, first of all. I still have terrific, great friends that even, it was my 45th, let's say it, 45th reunion this year. And that all those years later, I still have these great friends. I would call them the 2 a.m. If I had to call them at 2 a.m., 6 of them would be here at 2:15 if I needed them, you know, if they could. So yeah, and those kinds of relationships in life, when you have good friends, I think that also carries over in your work life of knowing how to treat people, you know, how you want to be treated and how to treat others. So many great, I loved John Carroll. I still talk about it so fondly because it was just such a great experience for me. But I also want to say that many of our jobs are like dominoes. You know, you might see me sometimes in the camera, but really there's like 10 people behind me that helped me get that day to that story. My photographer, editor, you know, the producer who read it, the executive producer who decided where it would be played in the course of the day. I mean, and I think if you think that it's only just you, in whatever your job might be, that's probably not the case. There's probably many, and it's that teamwork of getting there and respecting those others that helped you get there every single day. That when things don't go so hot, don't blow up at them, you know, because you were a part of it as well. But also figure out how to let's not have that happen again. So yeah, I mean, so many. Just life lessons that I had at John Carroll. I'm kind of bringing all the same question together, but yes, I think that I think about it even all these years later a lot, and definitely helped shape where I am.
Yeah, no, thank you for sharing. Great insight there. Jane, do you have any thoughts around that?
Oh, do I? I think I contribute most of my ability to work with lots of characters as my years of being an RA in Murphy for 2 years, because I did not want to be an RA, and my dad sent me back to school and said, oh, you're going to be an RA, that's free room and board, and you're going to get paid to do it, and that's going to be your job. And I'll tell you, I learned so much being an RA, because imagine, I was young, and there I was really having to kind of look out for other people. And in this case, it was other women. I was in Murphy. But what was so interesting to me was I, again, didn't even know the skills of which I was inheriting while doing it, meaning obviously a very diverse group. You don't choose who's going to live on your floor. You get to know a lot of different type of young women. And sometimes you have to advocate for some of them. Sometimes, to Marianne's point, you got to let them know that they're not acting the right way and they need to just, clean it up a bit, but then remain friends with them. Tell them, I trust in you. I trust we're going to figure this out together. And so I just loved my experience as an RA. And of course, while you're in it, you don't see anything that's redeeming about it. But sure enough, there I am out interviewing for my first job out of college. And what do you think that person would find on my resume that was unique? They'd say, you were a resident assistant. What does that mean? Tell me a little bit about that. And then I'd be able to pull a story about how I, thought of myself as fairly sociable and had lots of fun at John Carroll. But one weekend a month, I was the disciplinarian in the hall. And that was a skill set, right? You had to work with your friends. You weren't there to make enemies. And so I think it really, as I was doing it, had no idea what I was learning. But when I went to go interview for my first job, I honestly think that got me ahead of some of the other just paper applications at the time or resumes, because I could tell a story of what I learned at John Carroll. And then also I was a swimmer, and I just had such fun with the other female swimmers. We, spent lots of time together. And I think that also really helped me understand what it means to be really part of a team. And so I would say both of those stand out.
Yeah, no, I think that's a great thing to bring up, especially for any students who are on the call, just to encourage you to get involved. Because I know when I was on campus, I was in student government, on the tennis team, and Greek life. And, you get certain experiences and can develop those leadership skills in a safe space that really prepares you for the future. So yeah, I think that was a great point, and just encourage people to get involved on campus. Katie, do you have any thoughts?
Yeah, I fully credit the liberal arts education with being, a well-rounded thinker and everything, and being able to see that larger picture was really helpful, both, from a personal and professional standpoint. Learning empathy, that goes a long way in being a people manager for sure. When I was at John Carroll, I worked in the writing center, and I think that was kind of the first introduction to, checking your ego at the door, asking for help when you need it. And for me personally, realizing that, yes, there are certain rules to writing that you need to stick with, but just because it's not my way doesn't mean it's the wrong way. And I think that just can take you so far when you realize that everybody has something to offer. And you really have to just, kind of coach them, guide them, and help them kind of realize their potential.
Oh, that's great. Thanks for sharing. Since I know we're kind of getting close to the end here, I do have one final question here. And this is really kind of in regards to any current students who are on the call. But if you could give your 21-year-old self a piece of advice, what would it be? And what would be helpful to know as they look to start their career after JCU? I'm going to start with Marianne.
Try it all. As far as I know so many need a friend to go join something, or to walk in the door of, whether it be an exercise class or whether it be just, oh, wow, maybe I should join this club. Try it all, even if it means a little bit out of your comfort zone. And don't give up on your dream. If maybe your dream adapts, but have a goal, go for it. Yeah. My 21-year-old self was scared to go be a reporter at that age. And now I'd say, gosh, now that it's in the past, it all went by pretty fast, but those early years were tough. but they were worth it, got me where I am. So yeah, be willing to make some mistakes. Oh my gosh, if you could see my tape of when I was a reporter in Peoria, you'd say, how did that gal ever get out of there? You know, it was pretty pitiful. I even had to get my teeth fixed a little bit. You know, I had a big gap between my front teeth, and, you know, friends would, I didn't notice it, but, you know, once you were on TV, it looked like I had 2 daggers, you know, so I had to go get that done. And I had to, you know, work in a small town to make some of those mistakes so that I was ready for the next spot. And yeah, it was risky. It was lonesome at times, you know, but boy, I'm so glad that I did it. So yeah, I hope you try. I hope you'll try it. Reach out to others, reach out to John Carroll people, you know, like us, because I think people are willing to help and give you a hand along the way.
Yeah, that's absolutely true. I mean, one thing to really take advantage of is that John Carroll Alumni Network, because people are, you know, just so willing to help. Jane, do you have any final thoughts?
Yeah, I have a couple. I would say, one, put your head down and just work hard, because you'd be surprised. Sometimes that gets you through some really tough stuff. It might even be some personal trials and tribulations. And sometimes it's nice to just put your head down and work your way through it and not get caught up in maybe some of the things that are going around in the office or the temperature of things at work. I think that would be number one. Number two, if it's a toxic situation, remove yourself. You can do that. You're strong. You put one foot in front of the other and navigate your way away from it, because again, trust your gut. You'll know that that's not the right situation, or those that have been maybe forced to spend time with or work with, and they're not bringing out the best qualities in you. Again, do your best to remove yourself and work towards something a little better. So that's that trusting your gut. And then I think read, look, I wanted to leave everybody, Adam Grant, who's an organizational psychologist, has a podcast called Think Again. And he also is on Instagram at Adam Grant. And there is not one week that goes by that he has something written or that he states, or that's just very insightful about all of what we're talking about today, which is just being a good human and trusting your gut. And, think about who you spend your time with, because that's a reflection of who you are. So be careful and think twice, do the best you can. If it's not working out for you, advocate for yourself and kind of remove yourself. So I just think there's a lot in that, but I think sometimes it's just put your head down, trust your gut, and put one foot in front of the other.
Yeah, no, thanks. That's great advice that we all definitely need to take to heart. Katie, any final thoughts, tips, or advice?
Yeah, growing up, my grandpa's favorite expression was, you're the master of the unspoken word. And, it was one of those things that really didn't sort of resonate until I started working. And, when I first started, I was split between events and human resources. And my boss in HR told me, you're going to have people approach you who are going to want to be your friends because they think that you have information that you're going to share willingly. And I would just say, similar to what Jane said, rise above the office gossip. Don't put yourself in situations where, it's toxic. So that was, that's one key piece I would give to anybody starting out in their careers. And then I would say, embrace the fear of the unknown, go for the new things, try something different. If it doesn't work, at least you did it and you can move on to the next thing. So, there are a lot of opportunities that are going to come your way. So go for it.
Yeah, no, great advice. And I can say too, being someone in HR, we really don't have that much insight or power. So you don't really want to come to us for that. But Mary Ann, any final thoughts from you?
No, I really like what both of them said. That part about, when you're with folks, I'm in a very competitive business. And if you get caught up in all of that, if that's all your motivation, you can really lose sight of what is going on. Really keep focused, do your hard work and be yourself, be true to yourself. You know who you are. And that's what you want. You really can't get caught up in those who are there to tear others down. That's not the kind of life you want to lead.
Yeah. No, great insights. Great way to close. I feel like I personally have learned a lot from this past hour. So thank you all for taking the time to be part of this panel. Very informative, very inspiring, and just really appreciate you being here. So now I'm gonna go ahead and pass things back over to Amber.
Thank you, Jane, Katie, Marianne, and Amy. We appreciate you being here with us this evening. We are so incredibly fortunate to have you with our JCU community. Thank you for sharing your expertise with all of us. Before we conclude, I want to invite you all to two very special gatherings this weekend. First, on December 11th, the Chicago Alumni Chapter invites you to celebrate the holidays as they go to Music Box Theater to see a Christmas classic, White Christmas. On December 11th, JCU invites you and your family to be part of one of the university's most cherished traditions, Christmas Carol Eve. This year, JCU will be dedicating and lighting a new Christmas tree, welcoming Santa, and gathering to share the holiday cheer with festive songs, food, and drinks on Rodman Terrace and the main quad. We hope you can join us. If you cannot make it but still want to be a part of the festivities, you will be able to watch the dedication and the lighting of the tree. For more information on all of our programs, including these festive gatherings, please visit jcu.edu/alumni. Finally, please consider a charitable gift to John Carroll in support of our students, faculty, and the entire campus community. If you've already made a gift this year, thank you for your generosity. If you have not, please join me in supporting JCU so we can continue to deliver an outstanding education for our current and future Blue Streaks. You can make a donation by visiting jcu.com/give. Thank you for joining us tonight. Take care, be well, stay safe, and onward on. John Carroll.